Hi, welcome back. This is the Post Show. We're going to continue this conversation about what's happening in Bahrain. I want to go right back to our Skype guest. Now, Suhail, Zainab made some strong statements regarding your comment about your feelings on torture. How would you respond?
First of all, I think accusing the king's sons of torturing people directly, I think that's a ridiculous accusation. And with all due respect, I think this is a highly imaginative accusation. I personally know people that were arrested, friends of mine. And as you well know, and Zainab knows more than I do, that very many people in Bahrain were arrested. I know people that were arrested, and they told me in their own lips we were treated well. And I also know people that were arrested that were beaten. So if anything, this proves to me that this is not systematic. And I don't, whatever transgressions have been done, I don't condone them by any means, but to claim that it's systematic, I think might be a little bit overboard.
So, I have a question overall. It seems like the Bahraini government, in particular the security forces, are highly competent, highly trained, and overall very well organized. How is it the case that you have that type of competence, but you also have sort of regular torture for individuals through individual transgressions of security forces?
That's a great question, and I hope that these things will be revealed in the Human Rights Commission report that will be revealed in October, and I hope that the appropriate measures will be taken.
Are you saying then the government security forces weren't competent enough to be able to identify the significant number of individual transgressions of their own forces committing torture?
What I do know is that I cannot comment on this because I'm not with the Ministry of Interior, but what I do know is that all these are being investigated, or there's already some people from the Ministry of Interior that were arrested. We've been hearing about officers being arrested, and I hope that every single one who has overstepped his boundaries will get arrested and will get punished. And then I hope that the next phase, that we can go through some sort of reconciliation process to bring the harmony that has existed back to Bahrain.
Suhail, on the topic of that reconciliation process, we have a tweet from Abu Ahmed saying, I want to ask Suhail al-Ghasabi, mosques were demolished and houses attacked. How can we make sure that won't happen again?
Also part of the mandate of the Human Rights Commission to investigate these. What the mandate is to provide a narrative of the February 14th crisis, to look into allegations of human rights abuses and also into allegations of the destruction of mosques. And once again, we look forward to reading that report and make sure that the right action is taken afterwards.
Zainab, can you speak to these allegations?
Well, actually, I was just going to comment that Suhail said people responsible for crimes should be punished, and I agree with him completely. And I think that the King of Bahrain is responsible for many crimes against the people of Bahrain. He came out in his military uniform when they attacked the roundabout, which killed, where the military and the police killed Bahrainis. And I think the King of Bahrain, like any other Bahraini, should be put on trial for his crimes, just like his uncle, Khalifa bin Salman al-Khalifa, and just like the Crown Prince Salman bin Isa al-Khalifa. Salman bin Hamad al-Khalifa. What we're trying to achieve here in Bahrain is that all Bahrainis should be equal. Al-Khalifas should not be above the law. If they commit crimes against other Bahrainis, they too should be put on trial for what they have done. I have been sitting with children of martyrs, and they want their rights for justice as well. And I think it's just... sometimes I'm at a loss for word because of what's happening here in Bahrain and how some people are trying to show it to the world abroad. People are suffering, people are in pain, and every day it's continuing. And some people, the pro-government people, are trying to talk about how everything is changing now, how the government wants to make reforms. In fact, all the crimes that are happening, they are continuing to happen right now. At this moment, we have people in the hospital because of being tortured. We have Ammar and Liskafi. They're unconscious in hospitals because of the way they were beaten by riot police. And all the attacks on villages and on people are continuing. There are still many detainees in jail. In some jails like Joe, there are people still being tortured. In fact, at the moment, right now, the village of Sanabis is surrounded by riot police because people wanted to come out in peaceful protest.
Zainab, I want to jump in right there because we're getting a lot of questions coming in from our audience on Google Plus, actually, and we're going to go to the first one from Michael Osterlink. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Derek. Two questions. Is there evidence that the Iranian Republican Guard is actually active in Bahrain? And my second question is, what response from the Shia community outside of Bahrain are you hearing?
Okay, so let's take that first part to Suhail. Is there any evidence that Iran is actively involved in Bahrain?
No one said anything about the Republican Guard. What I was referring to was public statements made by the Iranian government and by Hezbollah.
Okay, and then let's get Zainab a chance to respond to the second half of that question about the response from Shia communities around the world.
Well, I think it's not about Shia or Sunni. As we said from the very beginning, our protests have always been about unifying the country. Everyone has always been chanting, Sunni and Shia are brothers. We expect people around the world to see our struggle for freedom as a struggle of a people, not of Sunnis or Shia. So we expect people, Sunni or Shia, Muslim, non-Muslim, religious, non-religious, to feel for what we're going through and try to help in any way they can.
We're going to get another point coming in again from Google Plus briefly. This is Sana Saeed. Sana, go ahead.
Hi. So while there are very what both guests are saying, I do wonder how Suhail can speak so confidently when the known open facts still show an overly aggressive approach by the government, the entry of GCC forces, the import of foreign police officers, coupled with even just a fraction of the images that have emerged, whether on YouTube or pictures or the Al Jazeera document or wherever, they just indict the government's aggression, which I don't think can be defended. And we do see that there was a an increase in violence, if ever, from protesters following government aggression.
Okay, so Suhail, this is coming to you. Could you hear that?
I'm afraid I couldn't. If you can repeat it
I'll give you a little bit of clarity on it from the chat. Basically, she's asking the question saying that there are merits to what both of you are saying, but she wants to know, saying that the entry of GCC forces and the import of foreign police officers coupled with just a fraction of the images, she feels that this indicates aggression on the part of the government. Could you speak to that?
First of all, again, like I said, for the GCC forces, this was a show of strength to Iran, because Iran has been doing intimidating statements about Bahrain and about the Gulf overall. During the crisis, we saw many meetings between foreign ministers of the GCC, the heads of states of the GCC, talks of closer ties, closer cooperation, closer military cooperation, the incorporation of Jordan and the Kingdom of Morocco into the GCC. All these because we felt that we are very seriously threatened by Iran. As far as the importation of foreigners in the police force is concerned, I have to admit I'm not a big fan of this policy. It's a policy that's been around since the time of the British, and it's just been continued going on. And I look forward to the day that we have more Bahrainis in our security forces.
We have another question coming in a related point to Zainab from online.
Yeah, Zainab, Madrista771 is asking, you said the police are in the villages every night. And his answer, or her answer, saying, yes, they're there to prevent the rioters from harming innocent people of Bahrain. So can it be seen that, the government's just trying to protect what perhaps the majority of the country wants?
Well, actually, yeah, because those same protesters are actually taking a lot of videos and uploading them every night of their protests, and that's proof of how peaceful they are. Many of the protesters go out shirtless with nothing in their arms, just shouting, peaceful, peaceful, with signs of victory. So if you consider that to be any threat to the Bahraini people, then that's it's something really ridiculous.
Let me ask you a question, Zainab. I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you just briefly. I have an important question for both of you, actually. And Zainab, I'm going to ask you to respond briefly, and I want Suhail to respond briefly as well. Why do you think Suhail sees this issue so differently from you?
First of all, in Bahrain right now, it's not easy to speak out against the government. I'm sure Suhail is getting very uncomfortable being on the same show with me when I'm accusing Sons of the King of torture and talking about how the king himself should be on trial. In Bahrain, when you speak out against the government, you pay a very high price. And when you speak pro-government, you actually get a lot in return. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Now, Suhail, why do you believe that Zainab, if what she's saying is true, that it's difficult to speak against the government, why do you think she is speaking so vehemently, being so outspoken?
First of all, I have to tell you, Zainab, I'm not nervous to speak to you. I'm actually delighted to finally meet you. You've been very active on Twitter, so it's nice to finally put a name to the person. We have today a sectarian divide, and everybody is looking through the crisis through their own lens, through their own reality. So one reality for some people is that this is a struggle for freedom. Another reality for others is to say, right, these are protesters, rioters, their demands are legitimate, but why did the violence escalate? Why were roads blocked? Why were people kidnapped? Why was a hospital taken over? Why were people tortured? Prisoners taken by protesters and tortured, etc. So there's different realities that people are subscribing to. And once again, I want to make sure that we learn our lessons from this crisis, move forward, and we speed the process of reconciliation as quickly as possible.
Suhail, one question. We saw that, in Egypt, one of the main concerns, even still today, 6 months after the revolution, was to have government officials that the protesters saw them as being responsible for killing protesters during the revolution, being held accountable. We've seen, a plethora, almost thousands of videos and photos online, and let's assume only half of them are real. Don't you think that the Bahraini government is inevitably going to have to at least answer to many of those videos and qualify their approach?
I do want to comment on these videos. Now, I saw on the stream of the timeline, the Twitter timeline of the stream program, that many people linked also videos of the violence done by the rioters. You had people using clubs, knives, primitive bombs, and etc., etc. So if we're going to be talking about videos and photographs, yes, there's a lot of videos showing the protesters being abused. I don't deny this at all. But there's also a huge number of videos showing the protesters attacking others, taking prisoners, torturing Asian prisoners, etc., etc. So I think we should keep this thing into context and have a balanced view on things. It's not so straightforward. The Bahrain crisis, I don't know about other countries, but this is not a straightforward good versus evil thing. And also, I think what would help the country the most is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, similar to what happened in South Africa, where people spoke about their problems in the open, all the files were open, and then an amnesty was declared. And I think that would certainly help this country a lot and would bring people on both sides of the divide closer together.
Now, I'm going to leave, because we began with Suhail, Zainab, you're going to get the final word. Your response?
Well, I just want to say that, first of all, what we were talking about some people having different point of view, part of that reason is also the state propaganda, using Bahrain TV and the newspapers to mislead many Bahrainis into believing things that aren't true. There are many stories about protesters committing crimes that have changed. The facts have changed. The people who had died, their names had changed, and there's not a lot of evidence. That's yet another reason for us to demand democracy, where there will be fair trials, where we can really find the people responsible for crimes. The second thing I wanted to say is Suhail was talking about the GCC and how they all united to show Iran the strength of the GCC. I would say that the GCC, the heads of the GCC all united to show the Bahraini people the strength of dictators, to show their own people not to go to the streets and demand democracy. It had nothing to do with Iran. It had everything to do with the Bahraini people breaking the chains around them, going out on the streets and demanding that this country become theirs, and that the leaders in the country represent them and not represent one family and the interest of one family.
We're going to have to end there. I want to thank the both of you for joining us today. And we're hoping to keep in touch with you both. There have been some strong statements made, but I think we've had a reasonable dialogue. I also want to thank our community that joined us via Google+. Thank you so much for coming in and for presenting some interesting thoughts as well. And also to our online community, you had a lot to say on this. We're going to continue the conversation, as always, online. Tweet us using the hashtag AJStream. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ahmed. We will see you all online.